think it is equivalent. I think the Oklahoma and Texas move is bigger for the SEC, but I could see teams adding, but I don't see it happening for 5-6 years. I think that Texas and Oklahoma, I think that the Big 12 needs money right now. They have a new commissioner and they need money. So I think that they will try to buy out early and get into the SEC earlier than 2025. And 5 years from now, maybe see three more teams.
The craziest thing is you can't put a timeline on it. Because, I mean, if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, would the SEC have 16 teams? I'd say absolutely not. And here we are, understanding and knowing very well that Texas and Oklahoma will join. So the timeline is difficult to put on it because anything can change at any moment. And, you know, what is there a sweet spot about 5 years? You know, in 2025, Notre Dame's deal with NBC is up. I don't see Notre Dame as a likely partner with the SEC. I think if anything, Notre Dame would go to the Big Ten if they go into a conference at all. I think that's one area that I want to focus in on as well, is an area about Notre Dame and how this changes everything. But before we do that, Roman Harper did mention a lot of NIL deals and how that's changing college football. And Greg Sankey had something to say about NIL deals and how he feels about the current state of NIL and how he wants that to change. So we'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezovic. We are live in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. This is Stillman and Company on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
You watch The Game.
And he's going. Nobody's going to catch him. Derrick Henry, touchdown.
We talk The Game.
I don't think it was a bad play, but he took out their goalie.
We are The Game. Nashville's best sports talk. ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
If you suffer from joint pain, from arthritis, or an injury, you know the traditional treatments: pain meds, steroids, and then surgery, right? Willie Donick here with great news. Now there's a better way, and it's here now from the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. This is an advanced, exciting, and natural alternative that can give you lasting relief using your body's own healing power. Listen, steroid shots are toxic to your joints. Pain meds can be addictive, and nobody wants to go under the knife. It's 2022, and those old ways are out. The new way is in. Regenerative medicine, restoring and repairing damaged joint tissue using natural biologics. No drugs, no downtime, no surgery. QC Kinetics and their protocols can address any pain in any joint and give you the quality of life you deserve. So call the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics now. 615-249-4024. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024 for QC Kinetics.
Nashville's Best Deals is a great place to save cash fast. Get up to half off or more on dining and entertainment at thegamenashville.com/deals. Check back often for new featured deals and save money now at thegamenashville.com/deals.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? Starting trouble. No one likes that. We'll get you set up for some stronger starts. You might just need a fresh charge, and we'll take care of that free of charge.
But if it is time for a new battery, we've got replacement batteries that'll fit your needs, starting at just $69.99.
You can learn more about our battery selection at AutoZone.com. That's what makes us America's #1 battery destination.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Claim based on data from the NPD Group 2021.
Listen to Stillman and Company with me, Caroline Fenton, all season long on ESPN 102.5 The Game for your chance to win Nashville Sounds tickets courtesy of 312 Pizza Company in Germantown.
From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne, broadcasting on Alexa.
I appreciate that.
And other smart speakers. 102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome game 7.
Checkered flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell Media Station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We are live from the Hillside Medical Games Studios, and you can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every day. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry, Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezovic. We're hanging out in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. We heard from Roman Harper of the SEC Network earlier. We heard from Peter Burns of the SEC Network earlier. We also heard from Eli Drinkwitz, head coach at Missouri, breaking down the current state of his program. But one thing that you touched on with Roman Harper, Michelle, was the future of NIL. And he said, it's going to completely change the way that recruiting works. He said, like when I was trying to commit, when I was trying to figure out where I was going to go when I was 18 years old, it wasn't about how many millions of dollars am I going to get paid at whatever school. It was, who has the coolest uniforms? Because when you're 18 years old,
look great on you.
What colors look good on you? And I think that puts into perspective just, how young these kids are. And we forget a lot of times when they're signing these multi-million-dollar deals now, the Nico Amalaveas of the world, that these are 18-year-old kids. And it's going to completely change the way that we view recruiting. But Greg Sankey took to the podium earlier today to talk about NIL. And I didn't know which way this was going to go. I saw it going one of two ways. And it's the one of two ways that we've seen college football coaches respond to NIL. You have one side of the coaching tree that fully embraces it. Mm-hmm. And maybe they fully embrace it on the outside, but not necessarily on the inside, because NIL does not make college football coaches' jobs any easier. It's not about recruiting anymore. It's not about, it is. But it's not only about recruiting anymore. It's not only about who has the best facilities. It's not only about who gives me the best opportunity to compete for a championship. When you bring money into the equation, things change. So college football coaches have a much more difficult job now that it's not just about them anymore. It's not just about the program anymore. It's about trying to campaign with boosters and local businesses to gather up NIL deals to get the guy that they want. So college football coaches also have a very difficult time on the other side of that too, because if they publicly don't approve of NIL, there's so many recruits across the country that say, okay, well, I'm not going to play for that guy.
Note to self.
Yeah, I'm not going to play for that guy if he's going to say that I can't go make my money. Look at Dabo Sweeney, for example. He's very vocal about how he does not like NIL. If I'm a Clemson recruit, I look at that and say, well, Nick Saban or Brian Kelly or Josh Heupel, they're fully embracing the NIL deal. So I'm going to go and play for them where I can make the most money. It's a realistic, really tough balance of what a college football coach has to do. But Greg Sankey isn't recruiting. Greg Sankey isn't trying to get, 5-star, 4-star players to go from across the country in California to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Greg Sankey is fully 100% a businessman. So as a businessman, how does he feel about NIL? This was Greg Sankey earlier today on the current state of college football and NIL.
It's a difficult issue, subject to the onset of state laws that came into effect last July. And since that time, some of those same states have pulled back from those laws because it's in the state's competitive interest to do so. It's exactly what we warned about dating back to 2019, that a patchwork of state laws was the most ineffective way to approach name, image, and likeness. And here's our view. We need a clear, enforceable standard to support national championship caliber in every other national championship, so there is a connection and a common basis for competition. Our student athletes, we just had a Student Athlete Leadership Council meeting. They ask us for clarity and for uniformity and for institutional support of their name, image, and likeness efforts. A national standard would mean that high school juniors and seniors and their families don't have to sort through dozens of different state laws or institutional policies where state laws don't exist. It's an unfair way to treat young people making a college decision.
And that was Greg Sankey at the podium earlier, and pretty bold words from Greg Sankey saying, look, we need at least some sort of regulation, at least some sort of blanket rules, laws, regulations, whatever you want to call them, across all of college football. And I do have to say that I agree. because where does it stop with NIL? We've already seen how much it has evolved over just the 1 year that NIL has been in existence. I mean, it's multi-million-dollar deals. And so whenever there are teams like, let's say Texas A&M, for example, because they've kind of been at the forefront of this conversation in terms of massive NIL deals. Whenever there are teams like Texas A&M that can offer the $5, $6, $7, $8 million NIL deals, then that barrier only gets pushed up more and more and more, and other college teams have to give those offers to stay competitive. So where does it stop? Where is the cap? We always say Wild West, and I don't like using a cliche like that, but it really truly is. So I'm with Greg Sankey that while I'm completely pro players getting paid and getting their due and being able to benefit off the brands that they created for themselves, I do think that in order for this to have at least some sort of rhyme or reason, you need to have blanket laws because every state is different. But my question is, how do you do that?
Well, how do you do it once it's almost like the NCAA went into the Supreme Court thinking in their heads they had a chance to come up with some sort of plan, some sort of outline, if maybe. It's almost like in their heads they thought, oh, this will never happen, right? They didn't have a plan B. So when players are now able to monetize off their name, image, and likeness, there's absolutely no rules at all. And we've seen in the last year, like you mentioned, players making multi-million dollars based off these contracts. But then there's also players who are just making a couple extra $100 a week. And that's fine. I think it's great for the players, but I also agree with you and Greg Sankey. There needs to be some overarching governing body to help, which is supposed to be the NCAA.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just highlights, honestly, the incompetence of the NCAA of not putting a stop to or trying to regulate it at the very beginning, because now you're just trying to shove everything back in Pandora's box because you started this with zero regulations, and regulations would have been incredibly difficult, especially with the Supreme Court ruling that you cannot put a cap on the amount of money that a student athlete can make, which is a good thing. But it also creates so many more problems and issues, and maybe problems and issues isn't the right word to say, but so many more difficulties for these athletic departments. And you could say, oh, boo-hoo, Crimea River college football coach making $4 million a year. But I think, in terms of, Greg Sankey's reasoning is that, there needs to be a state-to-state regulation where it's not necessarily a cap and players can get paid their due, but it makes it so much easier for the players recruiting and for their process to have it be regulated by state rather than every state is just a free-for-all.
Well, and I get that, but what if, hypothetically, you are a recruit and you are going to go play football at LSU, and you get an NIL deal with Hilton Hotels.
Okay.
Right? Hilton Hotel, you're the spokesperson.
Or XYZ Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. XYZ Hotel. And the university is their hotel that markets with their university is the competitor. So how do you work in that?
That's a good question, and I'm pretty sure it either differs per university, or I think it would have to differ per university, and I'm almost certain that they can't take NIL deals of competing businesses that they're associated with. For example, I know LSU the best, so I'll use LSU. They have a partnership with a certain soft drink company, so there is no players can have a soft drink NIL deal with a competing brand.
It just gets hard, right? It just gets so
How
many
about that
other...
for not dropping any brand names? Wow.
Yeah, you're better than me. Jumping through so many hula hoops before you're even talking about anything on the field. Like, I know my old boss at Kentucky, he worked for the men's basketball team, and his position on the staff is solely working with players on NIL deals.
And that's how it should be.
You're going to start having to see coaches, I mean, I'm sure Alabama probably has one by now, because these are the athletes that the major companies are going to be going after. And these kids are going to be signing contracts. You're 18 years old. You want them to look over a legal document. You don't want your players, you need to protect them too. You don't want them to get into any legal problems or something, or accidentally violate their contract just because they didn't have somebody look over it. So it's a hard situation, because there's just so many what if scenarios and specific scenarios to specific players. But on the other side, there does need to be some sort of outline or governing body. And yes, that was supposed to be the NCAA, but now we're here now in the middle of it, trying to get out or figure it out.
Unwilding of the West, if you will. Let's go to your phones. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. If you have a thought, Adam in Portland is up next.
Hey, so, yeah, I like you two being on here together. That's awesome.
Thanks, Adam.
I'm actually, so excited that Lane Kiffin came on today. And if you listen to him, he sounded truly upset about the NIL stuff, like losing control maybe. And I hate him, and I don't hate people easily. You have to work to make me hate you, and I hate that guy so bad. Like, he's just straight.
Well, you're a Vol fan, aren't you, Adam?
Yes, he is.
But he's just straight trash. But
yep,
everybody he goes to, I mean, even like in his personal life and his professional life, everybody he goes to, he burns. He's not a good person. He's a terrible person. So if y'all have an opportunity to kick him in the knee, I wish you'd do that for me. But no, I'm really excited that something like the NIL is really bugging him, because it sounded like he's worried about losing control of his team, and I like seeing Lane upset.
Well, thank you for your call, Adam.
Thanks,
I do
Adam.
not intend on kicking anyone in the knee.
Yeah,
I'm not
we
going
will
to
not.
call Lane Kiffin a terrible person. I understand Adam's feelings, but Lane Kiffin has also been very vocal about how he would like regulations on NIL. The fact that Texas A&M has such a robust alumni group with a whole lot of cash. Ole Miss has a much smaller alumni group. It is a much smaller school than Texas A&M is. So I understand his frustration to say, look, my school competes against this other school, yet we're on a completely different playing field because we just don't have the privilege of having the same NIL assets that other schools in our division and in our conference have. That's just a reality of the world that we're living in. And Lane Kiffin is whining about it because he has the disadvantage here. Now, does Lane Kiffin want regulation because he wants regulation, or does he want regulation because he wants his team to be able to be in the ring?
Hey, Lane, you were at Tennessee.
I'm going to lean toward the latter. But I understand the sentiment of college coaches that are frustrated in this area that we live in, that it's not an even playing field. But also, it never really has been. It's never been an even playing field. This is just adding another element to it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you have a thought on NIL. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezovic here in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. And coming up next, Greg Sankey has been very vocal about how he would like regulation on NIL. But why? I want to get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
If you're on the road between downtown Nashville,
They're still in good shape to make the playoffs.
and I-840,
Players make it clear they don't want to be somewhere anymore.
there's a new way to hear all your favorite shows and sports programming on 102.5 The Game.
I go back to that play and I shake my head. What I was worried about is that they were still just going to keep the goal.
It's 106.3 FM.
Think about all the good Titans teams. This is very much so a run-first offense.
Now you have two choices to hear Nashville's best sports talk. Check out 106.3 now and add it as a favorite.
If you're looking to hire, look to Indeed. With Indeed's end-to-end hiring solution, you can attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
Hi guys, it's Andrew with Hillside Medical Clinic. Is erectile dysfunction damaging your relationship? Are you sick of the pill and all the side effects? Well, welcome to the future. We have a major medical breakthrough. Hillside Medical Clinic uses the most advanced form of wave therapy. Backed by 60 clinical studies, our technology uses pressure waves to repair and open up blood vessels. We've helped countless men get rid of their ED. But what is the true end result? Their relationship, even their lives, improve drastically. If you're ready to regain your love life, call us right now, and not only will the assessment and ultrasound be free, we'll also give you a gift that produces immediate results in the bedroom. It almost never fails. This is worth $550, and it's free to callers right now. 615-576-5000. That's 615-576-5000. Put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and experience what I call the happiness ripple effect. Call Hillside Medical Clinic now, 615-576-5000.
Hey, Willie Donick here. Are you feeling the sting of higher interest rates and higher costs? Those credit cards and other loans are costing more and more every month, and inflation is making everything else more expensive. Your home can save you right now. Your home's value is up, and there's a ton of cash in it, and you can access it with Loan Pronto. They specialize in zero-cost cash-out home refis. Get tens of thousands in as little as 2 weeks. And yes, VA loans are eligible. With a VA loan, you can access up to 100% of your home's value. So pay off high-rate credit cards and other loans. Consolidate everything into one super low payment. People who do this usually cut about $800 or more from their monthly budget. So if your home mortgage rate goes up a point or so, it's offset by your credit card rate going to zero. So call Loan Pronto and unlock that equity and wipe out the bad debt. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Looking for a career with purpose or have a passion for youth development? Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee provides a safe place where we gain the tools to learn, lead, and reach our full potential. And that starts with you. Offering competitive pay and free after-school care for employees. Don't miss the hiring fair on July 8th and 9th. Learn more at bgcmt.org.
The Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. Learn more at bgcmt.org. You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway. Now here's Jim Mitchell.
Our fleet vehicle program is a great benefit to all the fleet companies in Nashville. We are able to get their vehicle back on the road a lot quicker than the downtime of most dealers and most general repair shops, simply because we have the transmissions available. We're able to put priority on their vehicles to get them back on the road quickly.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway.
It's on. It's happening. Remember, you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter.
Get out of the way. I'm watching the game.
Presented by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
It kind of all happened, and now it's like, okay, we got to make rules or figure out something on how to, figure all this out. And like
Correct.
you said, we're kind of in the middle of it all right now.
Well, the thing was also they had the chance. When the Ed O'Bannon deal struck 10, 12 years ago, that was their chance. They had the chance to try and offer players or do something. But the fact that you stood there and just like, you know what, we're going to go to court and spend $250 million to say that, no, we don't want you to get paid. Instead of like just giving that out a little bit, just sharing a little bit, I think you would have probably ended up with a better solution and everybody would have been happy because you would have had some kind of negotiation where now you have no negotiation.
No going back.
And there's no going back. And now it's just money being thrown on the wall and nobody knows what the result's going to be because – you look at some of these teams, you can throw as much money out there. It's still not resulting in championships or wins. So what is the perfect formula? We do not know.
That was Roman Harper on the show earlier. Roman Harper, SEC Network. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezvik. We're out here in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. And I think that he said something very key there. And he said there's no going back because there's really not. Once it's out there, you can't go back. And we heard Greg Sankey earlier today talking about how he is campaigning for regulations on NIL. And I hear Roman Harper saying you really can't because honestly, what regulations are there? And what kind of enforcement is there of those regulations? I look at, the pre-NIL times. If you saw any sort of monetary exchange, that was a red flag. That was a no-no. And that was an NCAA violation. But now we're in the era of you have to find the source of the monetary exchange or you're trying to figure out if it was foul play or not. And that's nearly impossible whenever monetary exchanges are allowed. You can't get to, trying to prove intent is incredibly difficult.
You're not going to find the McDonald's bag.
You're not. Sorry to Tennessee fans out there. McDonald's bags are no more. Sorry, Jeremy Pruitt. But
it'll never get old. It'll never get old.
But now that the cat's out of the bag, essentially, there's really no going back to it. But Greg Sankey continues to campaign for it. So my question is, why? Because let's use Texas A&M. Texas A&M is leading the way with NIL deals because they have the money to do it. A Tennessee quarterback just got an $8 million NIL deal.
As an 18-year-old?
As an 18-year-old in high school. Bryce Young, his first month whenever NIL was allowed, had a $1 million deal. There are plenty of SEC players getting big-time NIL deals, and there are plenty of SEC programs that can pay out these NIL deals and be better because of it. So I think it's one of two reasons why. And this is just my thought. I want to get your thoughts on it as well. And also your thoughts, 615-737-1025, our phone lines, mobilescountyhyundai.com. I think one reason why Greg Sankey is pushing for this is because he has SEC school presidents, chancellors, and athletic directors whispering in his ear that, hey, this is unsustainable. We can't do this anymore. Because, like the Texas A&M's versus the Ole Miss example, Texas A&M has an alumni group that is able to afford these NIL deals. Ole Miss, that we heard from Lane Kiffin, just can't keep up the way that Texas A&M is. So I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Sankey is campaigning for regulation because he has ADs and presidents and chancellors in his ear saying, look, our boosters can't continue to pay out these $8 million deals anymore. Second reason why I think that he could possibly be campaigning for this is because he saw in this past year the SEC have a significant disadvantage over other schools. I don't think that's the truth, though. I don't see that being very feasible. Of course, you see kids from Miami or Oregon or whatever kind of, powerful college football program there is out there that are absolutely using NIL at their disposal. Look at the Jackson State, I believe he was a wide receiver who was originally committed to go to Alabama, then decided to go to Jackson State, and he said it was because he wanted to play for Coach Prime, it was because, he wanted to play at an HBCU, and while I think those things are probably valid, I don't think the millions and millions of dollars of payout hurt either. So I think it's one of two reasons that Greg Sankey wants regulation to NIL. ADs, presidents, and chancellors want regulation to NIL, and Greg Sankey is here to serve. Or if the SEC has a legitimate disadvantage in recruiting and on the field, and I don't see that being very likely.
Yeah, as far as your second one, like you said, throwing it out there, I mean, the SEC, I think if anything in the SEC, it can help some schools.
Oh, absolutely helps.
Like a Missouri, get those maybe guys who are going to go to a Big Ten school, maybe compete with them a little bit more, not compete with an Alabama or a Georgia actually, Missouri did. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think it's the recruiting aspect. I could see it being the ADs, chancellors, people with money at these schools chirping in the ear of Greg Sankey saying that we can't sustain this. Like you said, we need to control this somehow. These people in power afraid that these athletes are getting a lot of money and have that player empowerment aspect of things. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, Greg Sankey standing up here and saying we need regulation, it needs to be in lawmakers' hands. I mean, it needs to be, well, and it is, but him standing up here and saying that, yeah, he's pleading his case. Yeah, you're the SEC, the most dominant conference, but, I mean, what's it going to do? And
I think it speaks volumes, though, because it's the commissioner of the SEC. It's the commissioner of the most powerful conference in college football. And if he is calling for, changes to one of the most massive changes in college football, if not the most massive change in college football, at least in my lifetime, I think that carries a lot of weight. Lane Kiffin and getting up there and talking about it, I don't think bears nearly as much weight as Greg Sankey does. Because Lane Kiffin has a very obvious end goal. Greg Sankey's end goal is to make money and to make the SEC, or to continue to make the SEC as powerful as it is.
Could we see conferences regulated?
I think it would be incredibly difficult because it's all about state laws. It has nothing to do with universities. It has everything to do with state-by-state laws. So, and also, if a conference does regulate NIL, why would a recruit want to play for that conference? If I can make whatever money I want, zero regulations in the Big 12, the ACC, whatever it might be, just using those as an example, then why would I go to the SEC who has NIL regulations?
Well, have it be, I mean, this is us just playing lawmaker right now, right? Throwing out options. Have it be some sort of federal, but then each conference has different rules or different regulations because, I mean, the Sun Belt's going to be very different than the SEC, right? But, I mean, who knows? There's money everywhere, right? You could be playing in the Sun Belt and you could still be racking up a couple $1 million.
100%.
You just don't know. And you don't have to be in the SEC to be making this money. You can be making it anywhere.
Plenty of players that are making a lot of money in
You
all
said
places.
the Jackson State. I mean, so I threw out the conference thing, and now when I say it, it doesn't matter because everyone's making this amount of money. So, yeah, Greg Sankey's saying that, and maybe we will see a push, right? Elections are coming up, right? But I just don't know how, and that's a good thing I'm not in that seat to figure it out.
And
but
that's the thing is, you can campaign all day long for regulation, but I just don't see a world in which it happens because the Supreme Court made a unanimous decision that players can benefit off of their names, images, and likenesses, and you cannot put a cap to it. And so I think, when you're working against the Supreme Court, it's a little bit more difficult to regulate. But let's go back to your phones. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jerry is up next.
I have one of the important questions that no one has asked. Do they still have to have the grade requirements to be an active student, and should these contracts be guaranteed that they get some type of degree in order to continue?
Yeah, thank you for your call, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
These are still minimum GPA requirements.
Yep.
It's still, in the inner workings of the NCAA. And that's an interesting conversation. We talk about how anything is on the table in terms of conference realignment. Let's say 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, there are two super conferences, and it's the Big Ten and the SEC, and they break away from the NCAA. See, that's when you can start to have conversations about grade requirements. Do you even have to go to the school in order to play for that team?
Exactly.
I think we're far away from that.
Hopefully.
But who knows at this point. But now, yes, there are minimum grade requirements, and it is different. My understanding is that each NIL deal is different, and each contract is written up differently. Where I believe Nico Amalavea's deal, for example, he gets $2 million a year. So if he decides to leave after his junior year, it would not be an $8 million deal. It would be a $6 million deal. That money is not voided just because he did decide to leave early. And I think that would be silly for NIL deals to put voids in deals, or if you had to pay the money back if you didn't graduate, because that's a clear disadvantage to your school because you want your players to go to the NFL.
If you're a local company, I'm sure somewhere in the deals say you have to be playing for this SEC team to continue your NIL deal, because that's where we're seeing a lot of them is in these cities, these local companies, right? Because these kids are local celebrities. And, I mean, obviously at the top, you're seeing more national deals and obviously multi-million dollars, a Bryce Young, things like that. But as far as local companies, I would imagine – I mean, the reason they're popular is because they play for a Tennessee football, because they play for an LSU. And the reason they want to sign them is because you're their quarterback or their star running back.
And one interesting side of that, while we're kind of on the topic of GPA and graduation requirements, one thing that I've seen thrown around is if you have an NIL deal, and this is just completely hypothetical, an NIL deal above a certain threshold or above a certain dollar amount, you would no longer be eligible for a scholarship. And honestly, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't want to see someone, not be allowed to get the money that they have deserved, but it would ease a lot of tension or, some of the difficulties that a lot of these college coaches have with having such, tight scholarship requirements, and you have a cap number of scholarship players that you can have on your team. So if you have a player that's making $5 million a year with, let's say, a $20,000 a year scholarship, he's getting way more money in NIL deals anyways that'll cover his tuition and then some, so you open up more scholarship availability for players. I don't know if you're going to start seeing that, but it is an interesting element to all of this.
Yeah, and then you would have to, who would count as your scholarship players if you were, say, the quarterback? But then it comes down to, yes, you could make that a rule, right? But these kids are also 18. You're the star quarterback. Well, I don't want to play for school, but that's the real. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
I want my money now. But I could see that would be something that could be, an interesting way to keep it somewhat under control. You have your certain amount. Maybe you get less scholarships, and then the other people who technically are your scholarship players are using their NIL, but then
right. Well, you just wouldn't be a scholarship player, at least in the eyes of the NCAA. You would be getting your NIL deal, and it would open up scholarship space or scholarship money for other players on the team. So it would be a positive thing, I think, for everyone involved.
So, devil's advocate, you're the star quarterback. Yeah, you're making multi-million dollars, but they're getting paid, or they're going to school for free. You're having to pay for it. Yes, I completely understand. You're making that money.
But that's the other side to it, is if I've earned a scholarship, or if I've earned this NIL deal that's so massive, why is my scholarship taken away? It's almost
I'm the
like
best
you get
player on the
punished.
team.
Yeah, exactly. It's a difficult double-edged sword, but I do think it's an interesting thing to look at. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you have a thought. But coming up next, we're on the topic of NIL, and we talk about how all of these things in college football have changed, which is true. But how much has it changed, really? I want to get into that coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezovic, we are live from Atlanta at SEC Media Days. It's 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Hey, this is Roman Yossi, and this is Nashville.
Going to the front of the net, he scores. What a gorgeous move. Roman Yossi.
You're listening to the flagship of the Nashville Predators radio network, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
This summer, saddle up in Smashville as the Music City hosts the hottest party of the summer, WWE SummerSlam, Nashville. For the first time ever at Nissan Stadium. A little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, a whole lot of kick-ass. WWE SummerSlam, Saturday, July 30th. Live worldwide from Music City's Nissan Stadium. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.
Ever tried to shop for a diamond online? They all look great on the computer screen, but the fact is, most reputable jewelers like Genesis Diamonds wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole.
These are the diamonds that nobody wants to buy. We call them the B-quality diamonds.
That's Genesis owner Boaz Ramon, who says that even diamonds with the same grade and specs on paper can be very different when you see them up close in person, especially the ones from online dealers.
Those diamonds gonna look always cloudy or dirty. It's like you're wearing your glasses and there is fingerprints all over the glass. You just don't understand, or nobody told you that the material that this diamond was cut from was not the best material.
Why risk it? At Genesis Diamonds, they screen thousands of diamonds and only choose the best of the best for maximum brilliance, sparkle, and luster. Genesis Diamonds, Green Hills and Cool Springs.
I'm Boaz Ramon, and my accent is always on value.
Hey, it's Jared for TriStar Moving. If you're looking to move, you need to give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. At TriStar Moving, you'll get 5-star service throughout the entire process. Everything will be taken care of, from covering your floors, banisters, railings, front door thresholds, furniture, TVs, and more. They took great care of my move and made it as stress-free as possible. If you're looking to move, give TriStar Moving a call, 615-640-1219, or visit them at nashvillemoving.org/radio and get 5% off your entire move. TriStar Moving, my official movers.
Robbie and Rex Road here on ESPN.
Welcome into the DDC.
Stillman Company is delivered.
There's a new way to hear 102.5 The Game. Nashville's best sports talk on 106.3 FM. From downtown Nashville to Spring Hill on I-65 and to Murfreesboro on I-24. You now have two choices to hear our great sports programming.
Get the extra point, no problem.
And the Nashville Predators.
He scores!
Check out 106.3 now and save it as a preset.
Hey, this is Pekka Rinne. You're listening to Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
The national issues, though, go beyond the Southeastern Conference, beyond the college football playoff, beyond conference membership changes, and include important conversations about the future of the NCAA and its ability to be effective at leading the overall collegiate athletics enterprise, and how we effectively support young people who choose on their own to engage in name, image, and likeness activity. Last July, on that
list of issues we've seen over the last year. The NCAA's Board of Governors issued a press release that included these words, quoting, "The Special Constitutional Convention is intended to propose dramatic changes to the NCAA Constitution and to reimagine aspects of college sports." Athletes. And that same press release included statements like college sports must quickly adapt. This is not about tweaking the model we have, and we cannot go on as we are. At the end of that constitutional effort, what's really changed? You need to ask yourself that question. Did we need that effort to get at some of the Division I problems? I would submit not, but someone is correct in that statement that we cannot go on as we are.
That was SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey at the podium earlier. We cannot go on as we are, I think is an incredibly strong statement. And he's essentially saying the state that we're in with NIL in college football is not sustainable. But we talk so much about all these changes in college football, transfer portal, NIL, conference realignment, and NIL has been really the biggest one because it changes recruiting in such a massive way. It changes the way that we view the players and where they end up, and that's huge. But I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth here, because what has it really changed? Because here we are at SEC Media Days, and we've been talking about, the third best team in the SEC behind Alabama in the West and Georgia in the East.
Pretty much the same.
That's the exact same thing. I know that we're only about a year into NIL, and that there have been so many recruits who have landed NIL deals who are either in their first year or haven't even sniffed a college field yet. So the changes could be coming. I look at Nico Amalavea, for example, a quarterback who just got an $8 million NIL deal with Tennessee. You're not going to see the fruits of that NIL deal until at least 2023, if not later. And even then, will you see the fruits of it? That's the interesting part of NIL deals, is that you don't really have a return on your investment. You can pay DJ Uiagalelei, $1 million for a Dr. Pepper commercial, but is Dr. Pepper going to have sales go through the roof because they had Clemson's quarterback on their commercial? Probably not. But we talk so much about the changes, yet nothing's really changed.
A lot of it is kind of what if changes, right? What if this happens, then that happens? What if this player makes so much money that he stops showing up to practices and there's, a battle between him and the coach, right? These are all like what if scenarios thrown out there. What if he signs a deal with this company and it is a competing company with the school? Right, so these are all scenarios we have to throw out there. Of course, we're in Sports Talk Radio, so we throw them all out there. But if we look at it and we just take a step back and sit down for a second, yes, the commissioner is coming here and saying we need a governing body. But we knew that before this became legal. We knew this when they brought this to the Supreme Court, that they wanted players to be able to monetize off their name, image, and likeness. It really just came down to the NCAA didn't make one, right? And they didn't plan for this to happen.
The NCAA not doing their jobs.
Didn't plan for this to happen.
Color me shocked.
Yeah, right. And then Mark Emmert said, peace.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I'd probably dip too if I were him.
So, we sit here today, like you said, SEC Media Day. They're calling for a governing body, but as far as recruiting, Texas A&M, right? They got the most recent #1 class.
But
okay,
also,
but
Texas A&M recruiting well isn't
not new. Right? Saban might be mad about it because for once he's not #1, right? He's used to that, but a lot of this money going around was happening behind the scenes and just really not
it's
verbalized.
always been there. Let's not be naive.
It's always been there, and you can say, oh, I love my Vols, I love my Kentucky. Listen, I love Kentucky. We all know I'm a Kentucky homer, a Kentucky fan. Believe me, I know that those basketball, everybody knows. You'd be naive to think. So when we sit here and think what actually has changed, we're talking about it. That's what's changed. And we can now openly do it and do it more.
And another interesting element to that, too, is the way that it's changed as a viewer. Because I think when NIL first became legal, there was just a flood of emotions that had so many tentacles to it of if this, then that, then what happens if, all of these if statements. And a few of the concerns that popped up, one being, arguments or disagreements in the locker room or tension in the locker room because of NIL deals. The second being the viewing experience as a college football fan. Never once, and I say never once, it's literally been a season, but still, in this past year, I have a full season of a sample size. Have I ever looked at a game? Have I ever watched a game and my viewing experience been interrupted or, less satisfying or less fun or less emotional because one of those players is getting paid by a local team or by a local business? Never
The product
once.
hasn't changed.
And it's been, that was the biggest fear was, how is it going to change it for us? How is it going to change our viewing experience as a fan? And, is it just going to all be commercialized? Well, it is already, and it has been. But, all of these things that we were afraid of changing hasn't, at least a year in. All of these things that we talk about now about change, I understand that it's new. I understand that it's legal. And I understand that inside of these, these recruiting battles, it probably looks a whole heck of a lot different than it looks like from our point of view. But really, at the end of the day, Alabama's going to be picked as the best team in the West. Georgia's going to be picked as the top team in the East. That's not old news.
The product hasn't changed. You mentioned the viewing of the game hasn't changed. If anything, maybe recruiting is a little bit more competitive,
but it's always been competitive. It just adds another layer.
Or maybe we know it's more competitive now, right? Because before we didn't know that Tennessee their collective could offer $8 million to a quarterback who hasn't even stepped on the field for Tennessee yet. And a lot of it is risk. You're betting on what if this 18-year-old can become, the next Joe Burrow, can become the next Trevor Lawrence. And a lot of times they don't translate. You can get a 5-star out of high school and it won't translate to college football.
And that goes back to the return on your investment, is that you are pumping so much money just to get your player to show up and be part of, and, wear your colors. But there is no return on the investment. So I think that's another area to look into as well is, will NIL deals start to slow down once businesses start to see, hey, this is necessary for recruiting battles right now, but how sustainable is it really? And how necessary is it really in the future? I don't know. It still could be. It could continue to grow upon itself, but it's an interesting aspect to it as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get into your texts, your calls. Our phone lines are from wilsoncountyhyundai.com. But coming up next, we'll hear from Jack Besh, LSU wide receiver, who's speaking about the differences between the Coach O era and the Brian Kelly era from his perspective. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Kanazovic. We are live in Atlanta from SEC Media Days. It is 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Let's put the green flag in the air and turn them loose. Nashville's home for NASCAR.
He's going to try to make a big move here.
Is brought to you by the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. We are your racing station.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And the Game Nashville app.
Don't miss the Warren Brothers and Lee Thomas Miller, the hit makers behind #1 songs from Tim McGraw, Blake Shelton, and more at Oak Grove Gaming Saturday, July 30th. Tickets on sale now at oakgrovegaming.com.
From the Fox 17 News Code Red Weather Center.
I'm Fox 17 Code Red meteorologist Greg Bobus. Our forecast calling for high temperatures back into the 90s tomorrow after breaking our streak of 28 consecutive days in the 90s. We're talking middle to upper 90s for the rest of this week and very little to no rainfall throughout the week as well.
This weather report brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical.
Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
Nashville's best deal of the week is Bavarian Beer House at Opry Mills. Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, is full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German bratwurst, schnitzel, giant pretzels, and more in an Oktoberfest-inspired space. Visit BeerHouseNashville.com for their live music schedule. Get a $50 gift card for half off right now at theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last.
Did you book the Townsend's 10th anniversary ticket?
Alona's travel agency is overbooked and experiencing delays. She needs to land a new project manager to clear her business's runways.
Yes, Mrs. O'Hara, we checked. Pygmy goats do not count as emotional support animals.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Earn up to $500 in sponsored job credits by interviewing on Indeed. Visit Indeed.com/credit. Terms and conditions apply.
Darren McFarland.
That's the most personality I think I've heard.
Willie Donick.
Give me credit. I said it.
Chase McCabe.
I still talk to people outside of this building.
The DDC. Weekdays from 10 to 2.
Presented by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling.
On Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Sounds like this has been a game-changing day for all of us.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company. LSU wide receiver Jack Besh joins us now. And it kind of feels weird to say wide receiver Jack Besh because I'm so used to calling you tight end Jack Besh. Talk about that transition. Last year, you really emerged as, Max Johnson's favorite pass catcher, it looked like, after Keyshawn Butte went down with injury. So you kind of transitioned into that wide receiver role. What has that been like for you, just kind of assuming that new role as a wide receiver and a new role in this offense?
It's been really cool. But at the same time, like last year, I really didn't play tight end. Like I was listed as a tight end, but I really didn't do that much tight end work. It was really just straight receiver work. Just the main difference is at practice, instead of practicing with the tight ends and learning how to block, which I really didn't even do much, I'm going to be focusing just on all the antics and nuances of the wide receiver play at practice the whole time.
So, kind of that was not the biggest transition from last year to this year was your, position listed on the roster. Obviously, a big coaching change, a lot of players going out, a lot of players coming in. What has this past year been like for you and kind of this transition from the Coach O era into the Brian Kelly era?
First, I just want to say, thank you to Coach Orgeron, because without him, I wouldn't have been able to play here, and obviously LSU is my dream school, so definitely big thanks to him. But Coach Kelly has done an awesome job, not only with the staff, but the different players we brought in with the transfer portal. Everything has fit his mold that whenever he came in, what he wanted to do and what he wanted to accomplish. Everything, all his philosophies set out, and they all match with everybody that he brought in with the transfer portal. Everybody's great people, but great on the football field. But they're more than football players. They're great in the classroom. They're always doing what they're supposed to do. And different things like that.
So you also, you came from LSU last year, coming into this year. You have a lot of players coming into LSU, not just as true freshmen, but also a lot of players coming in from the transfer portal as well. So how have you kind of assumed a leadership role, being a returning player and being someone who grew up loving Louisiana and loving LSU so much?
Yeah, so one of the main things, too, about this year is obviously you're going to have that 1-2 leaders on the team. But one of the things they really hammered on was they wanted everybody to kind of step up in that leadership role, which then also goes hand in hand with accountability. You have to have the person to the right or left of you. You have to have them. They have to have the ability to tell you if you're doing something good or if you're not doing something good. To kind of get on you. Let's say we're running sprints and you're not finishing. To kind of get on you. It's really everybody is taking on that leadership role, which I think has been pretty cool.
Jack Besh is with us, wide receiver for LSU. So starting quarterback has yet to be named. How has that experience been like for you, not having a permanent guy under center and having your go-to guy in practice? How has that been not having an established quarterback named yet?
So first, there's a couple different levels to answering this question. First, I think that what's going on is just like a level of competitiveness that you couldn't have gotten if you would have named a starter. And then also, we're building chemistry with all 4 quarterbacks. So now they're going to name a starter, obviously. And whoever all 4 are fit to win this job and to lead our team. But now what's going to happen is now our second, third, and fourth quarterback, 1, 2, and 3 can all get hurt. And now the fourth quarterback is going to be able to have the same chemistry with all. Like, we're not going to skip a beat. So I think really what's going on is healthy competition, and it's in a way it's good for us.
You have Florida State coming up in just about a month. What about that game are you looking forward to?
I'm ecstatic for that game. New Orleans is going to be on fire. It's definitely not an away game or a neutral game. It's a home game.
It's not a neutral site.
No, it is a home game. We're going to have more fans. We're going to have a lot of fans in the Superdome. We're going to have even more, I could say pretty confidently, in Champion Square, watching it on the big screen, and probably even more on Bourbon Street. But, the city of New Orleans is going to be on fire, purple and gold, and I'm just very excited for it. It's going to be a huge game.
It's going to be a huge game. Again, Jack Bash is with us, wide receiver for LSU. So just kind of looking at the grand scheme of the SEC, is there a player or another wide receiver, player at your position that you look at that you say, that guy is a dog, like a guy that you've been looking at?
You're talking about in the present or in the past?
Present. If you do have one.
I mean, if anyone, I would say my fellow teammate Keyshawn Boutte. He is one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver, in all of college football. And being in our room, you just learn so much from guys like that. So, him.
Jack, we appreciate you.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for talking with us. That was LSU wide receiver Jack Bash. He was talking to Michelle and I earlier. We were just chatting after the interview, and he was like, yeah, tonight we're going to go have a nice steak dinner on Brian Kelly's dime. And you know what? Enjoy your steak dinner, Jack. Enjoy it. Good for you.
Listen, this is Brian Kelly's first SEC Media Day.
This is his first media day since, like 2012, maybe? When did he, Max, do you know? When did he go to Notre Dame?
They said his last one was in the Big East at UC, so it's been a minute.
Oh, whoa.
Okay, so it's been a minute. So
he's rolling out all the big stops.
Yes.
He's got a suit on. Looks like they're going to a steak dinner while Caroline and I are going to go get the free meal in Radio Row over here in Atlanta.
I mean, if he wants to pick up our steak dinner, that's totally fine. Let's go to your phones. Phone lines is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter texts in and asks, who do you think is the biggest sleeper in the SEC this year?
I mean, we talked a lot about SEC, Tennessee as a whole. I think, obviously, your upper echelon, Alabama, Georgia, those out of the conversation. But sleeper, Roman Harper mentioned Mississippi State, which I don't think he's far off with that.
Mississippi State has more starters returning than any other team in the SEC. Well, talk about consistency with Tennessee.
And he had a really interesting statistic. If you go back and look at Mike Leach's third year at every program he has coached at, it's an immense jump from that second to that third year.
Interesting.
So I think, and not to get all analytical, and numbers don't tell the whole story, because once you get on the football field, anything can happen, but I'm going to be really interested to see. We all joke about, Mike Leach, and he's like really goofy and he loves Halloween, right? And he's got a great charismatic personality. But I think in this third year that, he's a smart football guy, like very, very smart. And I think some people forget about that. And Mississippi State is often forgot about. But I think that they definitely will be the top dog in the state of Mississippi this year over Ole Miss.
I think Mississippi State is a very interesting school. And I look to Mike Leach being that kind of coach that can always make his team relevant. That can always be competitive. But I don't think that Mike Leach is the kind of coach that can make Mississippi State a competitor. At least a national championship competitor, at least an SEC West competitor. You look at Will Rogers, Mississippi State quarterback. The offense that Mike Leach runs doesn't work for every quarterback. Not every quarterback has the arm for an air raid, or honestly, even the football IQ for an air raid. Will Rogers has one heck of an arm. He led the SEC in passing yards per game last year. He was averaging around 370 yards per game. That is insane. Yet, Mississippi State isn't biting at the heels of the A&Ms or the Alabamas or even the Arkansas of the West. I don't really know if it's fair to call it a sleeper, but I think if I had to pick one, I pick Arkansas.
We haven't even talked about them
We
all
haven't
show
talked
long.
enough about Arkansas. I think Sam Pittman is the guy at Arkansas. I think they want him to be the guy. I think he wants to be in that program. And you talk about Arkansas, a program that has just been almost like the laughingstock of the SEC West for so long. And then you see Sam Pittman put out a team that was competitive with Alabama last year. So I don't know if it's really fair to call him a sleeper, because I do think that Arkansas is getting a good bit of their due, at least, in the offseason hype. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Arkansas almost be like a giant killer this year.
With their star wide receiver last year, Traylon Burks.
Oh, yes, a guy that we know very, very well.
Very well in Nashville. I mean, I can't believe it. See, that's the thing. You forget about these other teams because a Mississippi State, an Arkansas, a Tennessee, a Kentucky. It's really all of them are. It's almost like Alabama and Georgia. They're their own conference together, those two. And then everywhere
I don't want
else-
to go that far with Alabama and Georgia. I do think that it's easy to say that they're the two best teams in the SEC this year and coming off of both playing in the national championship. But I don't want to go as far as to say that they're in their own conference, because if Alabama showed us anything last year, they're beatable. Of course, that Alabama team last year was one of the more sloppy teams you could see Nick Saban put out in quite some time, and they still made it to the national championship. So, that just goes to show how impressive that team really is. But they're not untouchable. And Georgia losing so many key pieces to that defense. I go back to 2019 LSU, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Joe Burrow.
Duh. But just how many steps back that team took, not just because of, the coaching staff or the mismanagement of the talent. It's because they didn't have as deep of talent as they had. Georgia just lost even more players and even more starters from their 2021 national championship team. So I do think that Georgia is still going to be the winner in the SEC East. I still think that Georgia is going to be in the conversation for the national championship. But I don't want to paint this picture that Alabama and Georgia are giants that none of these other SEC teams can touch.
I think they can beat them, yes, in a game. But you play three. I think that I'm picking Alabama and Georgia every time. I'm picking those two to make it to the SEC championship. I just can't see. I don't see another team there quite yet. I think that Tennessee could get there. I think if Josh Heupel has another big step this year, Hendon Hooker, they have an immense amount of returning players. I think that their program, yes, is trending that way. But I think right now, I still think that, Georgia and Alabama are the teams. And I know you said that.
Yeah, they still are the teams to beat.
But I know Georgia lost a lot of players, obviously, to the NFL. But who's going to make it a game? I mean, Texas A&M, they beat Alabama last year.
Mm-hmm.
Can we see anybody in the East make it a game with Georgia?
You didn't see it last year.
No.
Very
much so not.
Tennessee scored more points on Georgia last year than any other team in their regular season schedule, excluding, obviously, Alabama in the SEC championship, but they still got blown out. So, no. You didn't see it last year. Do I think that there's an SEC East team that can close in on Georgia this year? Maybe. I don't know.
All of a sudden, it's South Carolina.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Spencer Rattler just comes out of nowhere.
But we just don't know because they're all in this, middle tier, right? That's been the big question of SEC Media Day. All of these ESPN talents saying, who has that third spot? Mm-hmm. It's really up for anyone. And I'm not ruling anybody out, except for maybe,
I'm ruling some people out.
Okay, yeah,
I'm ruling some
Missouri,
people
a Vanderbilt, okay, but South Carolina probably. But as far as the other ones,
could be a ball game. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezovic. We're in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. So the SEC looks drastically different. It looks different than it did this time last year. So what will it look like this time next year? We'll get into that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
You watch The Game. We talk the game.
You can't just pick up one guy and be competitive in the playoffs.
We are The Game. Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
Winning this award is truly like winning the Super Bowl of car dealer awards for Mercedes-Benz.
Edwin Vickery, General Manager of Mercedes-Benz of Music City.
Culture eats strategy for lunch. You have to hit on all cylinders to win this award. You can strategize all you want. You got to still have the right tools, and our tools are our people.
Live the dream with 3-time Mercedes-Benz Best of the Best Award winner, Mercedes-Benz of Music City. Go to mbofmc.com.
QC Kinetics patient Robert Patterson, a veteran and business owner, struggled at work and in the gym with chronic agonizing shoulder pain.
Those injuries just continue to nag, and if you don't treat them, they just get worse. And I just kind of abused my body for a long time, and it finally had said enough is enough.
That's okay, because QC Kinetics tells your pain, hey, enough is enough. Their regenerative treatments bring you relief by helping restore and repair damaged tissue with no drugs, no downtime, and best of all, no surgery.
I was able to exceed the goals that I had previously attained in the gym. It was absolutely worth its weight in gold, so I could continue to live life without limitation.
Ready to get lasting relief from your joint pain? Call QC Kinetics to learn more about how natural biologic treatments can get you lasting results. Call now. It's a free consultation.
615-249-4024. QC Kinetics. 615-249-4024.
Hey, it's Jared from my friends at Hiller. Hiller is celebrating the home of the free all July long with special deals for customers. This month only, take advantage of free whole home surge protection and interest-free financing for 12 months with the purchase of a new whole home generator. Free programmable thermostat and interest-free financing for up to 48 months on select new HVAC systems, and a free water sensor leak detector and free interest financing for 12 months when you buy a new tankless water heater. All of these purchases come with a free Happy Hiller Club membership. Their work is backed by the Happy OB or Services Free Guarantee. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Hey, this is Bomani Jones. What's your favorite podcast? Let me tell you why that'll be number 2 after you listen to mine. 3 times a week, I'm going to challenge you to keep up with me as I discuss topics from the latest in technology and music, and people getting dunked on. Also, you'll get the very best analysis of the games, and we watch them with encyclopedic level historical connection. Plus, we have got a community of guests that you'll feel like are your closest friends in no time. Listen and subscribe to The Right Time with Bomani Jones Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT-FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne.
Chase Elliott scores the win in the Ally 400 at the Nashville Super Speedway.
Nashville's exclusive home for NASCAR. 102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome game center.
Checkered flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell Media Station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We are live from the Hillside Medical Games studio, and we're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every day. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry, Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezvik. We are live here in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. We had Brian Kelly hit the podium earlier. Lane Kiffin hit the podium earlier, as well as Eli Drinkwitz, all talking about the states of their programs. Greg Sankey also hit the podium as well, giving the state of the SEC, which is a really interesting conversation to have, given that the state of the SEC is a big old question mark, at least
wobbly.
At least for all of us on the outside. Now, is the SEC a big old question mark for Greg Sankey? He had his words to say about what the future of the SEC looked like, or will look like, and he is adamant that beyond 16 teams, the SEC is at least set for now. This was Greg Sankey earlier about the addition of Texas and Oklahoma and how that'll change the future of the conference.
We're in contiguous states. It's a southeast quadrant. I do have a few letters about what southeast mean, but we are in the southeast quadrant of the United States. Those two additions actually restore rivalries. You know, the Texas-Arkansas game last year was pretty special, but that goes back a long way. Obviously, Texas and Texas A&M rivalry will be like our in-state rivalries across the league. You have Missouri and Oklahoma that are a quarter of the Big Eight that are now part of the Southeastern Conference, and the opportunity for Arkansas and Oklahoma to play regularly. I think that's right. That's who we are. Those fan bases get it. One of the very first calls I had, it's like, hey, we watch how you've made decisions in the Southeastern Conference and how you want to achieve as universities and athletically, and we want to be a part of that. Absolutely, that's right. Did I have an inkling? I'll be honest with you that about 18 months ago, I said, here's some projections of what could happen, and those two schools were part of it nationally, but I didn't know that this was about to happen on June 30. No, not at all. As I look and try to project what takes place and guess, that type of movement was somewhere in my thinking, but not at that moment.
A few things that I want to break down there. Again, that was Greg Sankey at the podium earlier today at SEC Media Days. First and foremost, let's go around the room. Greg Sankey said he didn't know that USC and UCLA were going to join the Big Ten. On June 30th, it was just as a surprise to him as it was everyone else. Roundtable, Max, is he lying or is he telling the truth?
Truth.
Why?
I believe him.
Fair enough.
Did you pinky promise or something?
Michelle, do you think he's telling the truth?
No.
Why?
I mean, he knows. If you're a commissioner of a conference, you know what's happening. You know what's happening around you. And for him to not make moves I think if he made moves right after, that would be him not knowing, right? And this happening and him being like, oh my gosh, I got to do something to, compete or like add another team or make another statement that like we're ahead. I think he was calm, cool, and collected. Then again, if you are going to be at the head of the table, you have to be, and you can't make rash decisions. But just from my point, I think Greg Sankey is a very smart man and knows what's happening. I think he's got, maybe little elves in places and
little birdies.
He had a feeling. Maybe he didn't know on the exact day, but I think he definitely knew that it was happening. Caroline?
See, I struggle. I think he's telling the truth.
Really?
I do think he's telling the truth. Michelle, to your point, he is the commissioner of the SEC, and he is the person that essentially holds the next chess piece of whatever move is going to be made in college football. But then again, why would he know? Did anybody know about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC? I don't think the Big 12 did. I think that was a surprise. I didn't know it was going to happen, and I think it caught a lot of other people by surprise as well. I don't think the Pac-12 even knew that USC and UCLA were going to leave the conference because they basically told us. They tweeted out a statement after it happened, after all the news was released, and they said, we're surprised and shocked that this happened, which, first of all, is just so Pac-12 and so just
I could
goes
be
along
remembering
with
this
their
wrong,
mismanagement.
But didn't the Big 12 tweet something like, this is not happening or something, and then it happened? I could be totally wrong on that.
Oh, I don't know.
Somebody text in if you remember.
I don't remember.
I swear there was an early PR statement. Maybe it's the one you're talking about.
But it was the Pac-12 statement saying, we're shocked by this move, which is one on the Pac-12 for not being, more ahead of the game with this and trying to, save their own butts in this era of conference realignment. But these are all moves that are made behind closed doors, and they don't want it to get out. They don't want these negotiations to get out, because let's say if they fall through, then now it's leaked that these two teams are trying to leave a certain conference. Now, what would that lead to? I don't really know, because they're bound by contracts for TV contracts anyways. But I don't think he really knew.
I understand your point of, I don't think the Pac-12 knew or the Big 12 knew, obviously, because they're leaving those conferences. But maybe he didn't know every detail of when it would happen or what it would happen or what would happen. But I think he knew that the Big Ten was going to make a move.
And to that point, how do you not know? You know,
Right?
Like, you make a massive move like getting Texas and Oklahoma into the SEC. You have to think that the second most powerful conference, second most competitive conference, second highest grossing conference in the Big Ten, I think that's right. I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but I think that's right. Was going to respond, was going to make a move of their own. So I'm sure he probably assumed it was coming down the pipe, but come, June 30th, when the move was announced, I gotta believe Greg Sankey. But my next point, roundtable to you. He talks about not wanting to go beyond the Southeast. He talks about, we are the Southeastern Conference, and this is our conference identity, is where we are, geographically located. Of course, you can, make the argument, well, Missouri's not in the Southeast. Well, Texas and Oklahoma are in the Southeast. But for the most part, it makes a whole lot more geographical sense having Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC than it does the USC and UCLA in the Big Ten. Do we believe him that he doesn't want to go beyond the Southeast? Max.
Yes.
Why?
Max loves Sankey.
Because Caroline agreed with me last time.
Fair.
I agree that he might not want to, just for tradition, and fans want to hear that. Fans want to hear, well, we're the SEC and we're the South and football, but I also believe that it could happen and that he might not want to. And I think the words were, did he say, I don't want to?
I don't remember. Can we get that again, Max? Just that part?
We're in contiguous states. It's a southeast quadrant. I do have a few letters about what's southeast mean, but we are in the southeast quadrant of the United States. Those two additions actually restore rivalries. The Texas-Arkansas game last year was pretty special, but that goes back a long way. Obviously, Texas and Texas A&M rivalry will be like our in-state rivalries across the league. You have Missouri and Oklahoma that are a quarter of the Big Eight that are now part of the Southeastern Conference, and the opportunity for Arkansas and Oklahoma to play regularly. I think that's right. That's who we are. Those fan bases get it. One of the very first calls I had, it's like, hey,
okay.
We watch how...
So I don't really think he said he didn't want to go beyond the Southeast, but he said
he makes it
contiguous states, which I didn't even know that was a word. I don't even know what that means.
Well, honestly, I will believe him, because if I think about what schools they would add, right, or who would even be in contention for the Southeast, well, throw in some ACC schools if, right, they were to get out. You could add like a North Carolina, right? That's still kind of Southeast-ish.
Southeast.
Right? So, yeah, I'll believe Sankey. Caroline?
No, I don't believe him. Are you crazy? No, absolutely not. I don't believe him. Screw tradition, screw geography, screw being contiguous states in the southeast quadrant of the United States. No, I don't believe him. I mean, if the past year has taught me anything, sure, tradition is important in college football, but is it important to the decision makers in the SEC? I have to argue, maybe not. I mean, like,
maybe just to Sankey.
I mean, no, I do not believe that. The number one thing of utmost importance, and you can argue if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't think it's either. I think it's just reality that the SEC is a business. It is, the SEC is here to make money and to print money, and that is exactly what they are doing. And if the opportunity to make more money off of a team in the West Coast presents itself to the SEC, you better believe they're going to make that move. And maybe I'm completely off base. Maybe I am not giving Greg Sankey his due. Maybe he, cares about maintaining the rivalry and the integrity of the Southeastern Conference so much more than I think he does. I just can't believe that it does. I can't believe that it does. Everything has an ulterior motive, and in this one, it is money.
I'm sorry, I have to go to the text line really quick, driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Rob from Clarksville. Max is doing the Sankey leg today.
Max, you are doing the Sankey leg. Our resident Sankey stan. Max Hers.
That made me smile.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your thoughts on this, as well as one aspect of conference realignment that I was hoping to get an answer out of today, and I don't really think that we did. We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezvik, we're in Atlanta for SEC Media Days at Stillman & Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Join Chase McCabe for Chasing Checkers every Sunday morning at 8 for all the news in the world of motorsports.
Joey Logano gets the very first victory in the next-gen car
while hearing from the big names.
Two-time champion Kyle Busch.
Being able to bring NASCAR, the Cup Series, back to Nashville is cool.
It's Chasing Checkers, presented by Apple Collision Centers and the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It's Black Friday in July at Electronic Express. This week, get an LG 70-inch 4K TV for $599 or a Whirlpool 4-piece kitchen package for $27.99. Save up to 50% in every department at Electronic Express. Computers, appliances, 4K TVs, housewares, furniture, mattresses, and more. Don't miss out on an HP laptop for just $349 or a Samsung washer and dryer for $549 each. Shop in-store or online with free financing. Electronic Express. We make it happen.
Have you seen the selection of luxury pre-owned Rolex watches they now have at Genesis Diamonds? If not, prepare to be amazed.
If people really know the watch world, they come in and they're in shock. They're like, I cannot believe you have this selection here. They're able to see them, touch them, feel them.
Meet Genesis watch expert Charlie Rivers, who says over the past few years, Genesis buyers have scoured the world to build a collection of luxury pre-owned Rolexes, including all the hard-to-find models.
Daytonas, Pandas, Sky Dwellers, a huge selection of Submariners, Hulks, Kermits, anything that you could ever possibly want. We have every luxury pre-owned Rolex that we have here. We ensure that it's in pristine condition.
So come in today and find the timepiece of your dreams at Genesis. Or if you already own a Rolex and are looking to trade for a different model or even sell it, Genesis can help you get top dollar.
If you have a Rolex, definitely bring it in. I would love to see it and do a complimentary evaluation on it and see what we can do for you.
Genesis Diamonds, now with one of the largest selections of luxury pre-owned Rolexes in America. Green Hills and Cool Springs.
Parman Tractor and Equipment is your one-stop tractor and equipment solution and Middle Tennessee's Link Belt and Takeuchi dealer. No matter how you're getting there, start with Parman Tractor and Equipment. Rent or purchase a track loader, mini excavator, large excavators for your job site, or something in between. Their service and parts team will get your work site up and running in no time. Parman Tractor and Equipment will come to you for service if needed. Visit ParmanTractor.com for more info. Your Middle Tennessee Link Belt and Takeuchi dealer, providing totally outrageous customer service.
We want to hear from you.
Thanks for taking the call.
Join the conversation. Call or text at 615-737-1025. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You're listening to Stillman & Company.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company, 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezvik. We're here for the next 4 days here in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. We heard from Lane Kiffin. We heard from Brian Kelly. We also heard from Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri head coach. But there was one thing that I was hoping to hear today from Brian Kelly. And I know you're probably listening and, rolling your eyes like, okay, of course, Caroline wants to hear something from the LSU head coach, but it actually has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with LSU. And it has everything to do with conference realignment. Because the prettiest girl at the party, the belle of the ball, the coolest person without a prom date is Notre Dame.
The hot ticket on the market.
The hottest ticket on the market is Notre Dame. And when we're going to have conversations about conference realignment, we would be remiss to not mention where Notre Dame, where their role is in all of this. So that's what I wanted to hear today, was Brian Kelly's thoughts on Notre Dame potentially joining a conference. Because I think if we're going to talk about the SEC being on pause, which is something that Greg Sankey really harped on today, was the SEC not wanting to go beyond 16 teams. If we are going to operate in a world where we believe that, I don't, but, let's just play pretend. You could argue that the SEC or the Big Ten or really any other conference is going to be on pause until Notre Dame makes up their mind of where they will play, live, for the next few years. So this was Brian Kelly earlier today about what he thinks the future of Notre Dame will be.
Would you be surprised if they joined a conference, or Do you think they'll stay independent, and just what do you think of their philosophies toward that?
It's probably not been high on my list of things to think about. I've been trying to correct a slice for the last couple of weeks, and I haven't had much success with that, so I'm going to go back to my day job. But I would say that, certainly Notre Dame still is, a coveted, university in terms of, what conference would want them. Jack Swarbrick knows what he's doing. He's got his ear to the ground. They're going to land into a good position no matter what they do, whether they stay independent or whether they go into the, one of the other conferences. Notre Dame can carry itself pretty good.
So essentially nothing from Brian Kelly. And you could tell he did not want to answer that question.
Oh,
you
no,
could tell
definitely not.
I mean, the sigh in his voice when he was first asked that question. I find it hard to believe that he didn't probably expect a question like that.
You have to.
And of course, he's not the head coach at Notre Dame anymore. But, with Notre Dame being such a hot button topic of conversation over the past couple of weeks in conference realignment, you have to ask the former head coach, the most winningest coach in Notre Dame history, in your opinion, what is the future of Notre Dame? Now, I was really hoping to get some insight because there's probably nobody that has it better, or he's probably up there with other people who know the ins and outs of Notre Dame football more than Brian Kelly does, whether he's the head coach right now or if he's not. And we didn't get it. And I was really hoping that I would get some sort of peek behind the curtain of what conference realignment could be in the next coming years, depending on what Notre Dame decides to do.
Well, and if you're him, you think he wants Notre Dame to come to the SEC? I mean, I know we talked about if Notre Dame were to pick between the Big Ten or the SEC, we think that they would go to the Big Ten just because it's more logistical.
Academics.
It fits. It's
geography. It makes sense.
How do you think that makes Brian Kelly feel? Do you think it makes him feel mad?
To be asked by Notre Dame?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, he's been at Notre Dame, or he was at Notre Dame for so long. I think it's a very fair question to ask.
Oh, 100%.
In the college football landscape that we're currently living in, and that Notre Dame essentially has, holds the key to the car of where they want to go, that they essentially have the pick of the litter if they do want to join a conference, and they also have the privilege of being able to decide to not join a conference. Notre Dame is going to be the most talked about school in terms of conference realignment over the next few years, I believe, if conference realignment isn't faster than that.
But will they? Why would they now? I get it. Everything's changing.
There are so many reasons why they wouldn't.
Yeah, they've for so long just been on their own. They can do what they want, right? They've got their NBC contract. They play against ACC schools, which we've talked about that they've got their contract for the next 14 years. So, I mean, I highly doubt that contract will not be broken.
I think the only reason why they would is money. Because if you look at the amount of money that the SEC and the Big Ten have made this past year, it's almost double what Notre Dame was making from their TV deals with both NBC and the ACC network. So, I mean, obviously Notre Dame is a private institution, so you're not going to get a full idea of exactly how much money they are making from these TV deals. But you can assume that it's about 20 grand, I believe. 20 million from
that's a penny to them.
Yeah, I was about to say, whoa, that sounds really low. 20 million from NBC, and I believe it's about 10 to 11 million from the ACC network and from ESPN, from their small portion of the pie with ACC games. So you're looking at about $30 million versus the SEC, whose member schools, I believe, each received between $50 and $55 million. So, I mean, that's a big difference.
Yep.
That's a really big difference. That's the only reason I would see Notre Dame join a conference. But they are renegotiating their TV deal in 2025. Whether they stick with NBC, I'm sure CBS is going to want to be a big-time player to eventually get Notre Dame's rights. And you can assume that that deal will go up very much so. So maybe it wouldn't be worth their while in the new negotiations. But I don't see any sort of benefit for Notre Dame to join a conference in terms of college football playoff. because they've made it twice before and they're not in a conference. If the college football playoff does expand to 8 teams to 12 teams, and there are 4 teams with an at-large bid or 6 teams with an at-large bid because of conference champions, maybe that would be the thing that gets them in. Not having the privilege of having that first round bye if the college football playoff does expand, but we're not there yet. So I don't see it being very likely.
Well, and obviously, I mean, we talked about this even on the drive to Atlanta this morning of, Notre Dame is that hot ticket. Who's going to take them? But as we've been sitting here today, as people have been speaking on Notre Dame, as we've been talking about conference realignment, hearing from Greg Sankey, hearing from a bunch of the other SEC coaches, you kind of sit back and you're like, well, why would they? Right? The money. Yes, we talked about that. But as far as, it's not like they've been at any disadvantage, as far as on the field. So why would they rush into anything at this point when it is not quite to 2 super conferences? I know people are already saying the SEC is a super conference. Yeah.
People aren't saying that. Greg Sankey is saying that. Let's not get that one twisted.
And, of course, he's going to say that. But it's not like we're in East and West divisions and you essentially have to pick a side. Really, the only thing that's changed is the Pac-12, the Big 12. ACC hasn't been touched yet. They're still under contract for 14 more years. Notre Dame, the Big 10 and the SEC both want that school, but everybody's wanted Notre Dame they've always been independent, right? So what's the rush? If I'm Notre Dame, I'm chilling and, the money, I guess, whoever's going to offer up the most, but you want to be that exclusive team, you want to have that. Is a couple $1 million more? Probably yes. You want that.
And also, too, the value that Notre Dame places on being independent. I know a lot of fans love it. I do wonder how much the higher-ups at Notre Dame, the president, chancellor, AD, the higher-ups at Notre Dame, how much they do truly do value being independent. Because, the SEC says, we're good with 16. But I don't think that they would forego a pretty good opportunity to join to expand beyond 16 if that was better for them in the long run. I don't know if Notre Dame would forego an opportunity to either make more money, or I guess really to make more money by not joining a conference just because they value being independent so much. I don't know. That's a question I can't answer because I don't know how much Notre Dame fans really do truly appreciate that. Or at that note, Jack Swarbrick and the rest of the higher ups at Notre Dame, how much do they truly value being independent once the money starts to become a little bit too much to ignore?
Well, and it's very much, a religious school and based on tradition and based on values. And I had an aunt there and a bunch of family members, go to Notre Dame, and that is like their bread and butter, and it's tradition, and it's that. And yes, you can say that about the SEC, but at the end of the day, like, the SEC is not shy to be like, we love the money, we want to make the money. Like, Notre Dame could have done that.
Well, they won't admit it.
Yes.
They won't admit it's for the money.
No. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So they won't admit it, but I don't know. I don't see them moving personally.
Yeah, I don't
At least
either.
making a move before their contract is up or letting us know, right? I see them staying out till 2025. And to be honest, I see them signing something else with NBC or CBS or something and continuing to be independent.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get into your calls, your texts, your thoughts on what we have heard from SEC Media Days so far today. But what is going to be the biggest change in college football? What are we going to see come to fruition the most out of all of the changes that have been made in college football? We'll get into that coming up next. Plus, your phones. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
If you're on the road between downtown Nashville,
They're still in good shape to make the playoffs.
and I-840,
Players make it clear they don't want to be somewhere anymore.
there's a new way to hear all your favorite shows and sports programming on 102.5 The Game.
I go back to that play and I shake my head. What I was worried about is that they were still just going to keep the goal.
It's 106.3 FM.
Think about all the good Titans teams. This is very much so a run-first offense.
Now you have two choices to hear Nashville's best sports talk. Check out 106.3 now and add it as a favorite.
This is Chef John from Kitchen Notes at the Omni Nashville. Inviting you to come join us for breakfast and lunch. We are offering some exciting new menu items. For breakfast, we have a smoked prime rib hash. Comes with a sunny side up egg, hominy, caramelized onions. It's a great start to your day. We are featuring a sourdough pancake made with a sourdough bread starter. It's a fun spin on the classic buttermilk pancake. As always, Kitchen Notes is serving biscuits all day. Come join us and create a memorable experience here at the Omni Hotel. Food is all about memories for us. We'd like you to start a new memory here at Kitchen Notes in the Omni Hotel.
Breakfast at Kitchen Notes in the Omni Nashville Hotel.
Hello, Nashville. Looking to save money on your wireless bill? You can when you choose Consumer Cellular. Sign up today and you'll get the exact same coverage as the leading carriers for half the cost. This gives you direct access to the widest, most established cellular networks available. Consumer Cellular offers flexible monthly plans with no contract and simple, affordable service that's perfect for your lifestyle and budget. Featuring a wide variety of top-of-the-line phones from Samsung, Motorola, and Apple, you'll find a phone that's perfect for you. Everything is backed by a 100% risk-free guarantee, plus 100% U.S.-based award-winning customer support. Switch your talk, text, and data plan before July 31st and get $100 on every new line of service. Right-size your plan and downsize your bill with Consumer Cellular. Visit consumercellular.com/Nashville100 and enter code Nashville100 to start saving today.
Hey, Willie Donick here. Are you feeling the sting of higher interest rates and higher costs? Those credit cards and other loans are costing more and more every month, and inflation is making everything else more expensive. Your home can save you right now. Your home value is up, and there's a ton of cash in it that you can access with Loan Pronto. Loan Pronto specializes in zero-cost cash-out home refis. You can get tens of thousands in as little as 2 weeks. Pay off those 23% rate credit cards and other loans. Consolidate everything into one super low payment. People who do this usually cut $800 or more from their monthly budget. If your home mortgage rate goes up a point or so, it's offset by your credit card rate going to zero. So call Loan Pronto now and unlock that equity and wipe out the bad debt. Do it now. You can even skip your next 2 house payments. Call 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Welcome to the Everyday Hotel. You'll be on the 2nd floor and your other room will be on the 14th.
Wait, we asked for connecting rooms? These are 12 floors apart.
We tried, ma'am, but technically they're only 11 floors apart. We don't have a 13th floor.
We can't be 11 floors away from our kids.
I don't see a problem.
Stuart!
When you want separate rooms, but not that separate, it matters where you stay. Only Hilton offers confirmed connecting rooms at the time of booking. Hilton, for the stay.
Robbie and Rex Road here on ESPN.
Welcome into the DDC.
Stillman Company is delivered.
There's a new way to hear 102.5 The Game. Nashville's best sports talk on 106.3 FM. From downtown Nashville to Spring Hill on I-65 and to Murfreesboro on I-24. You now have 2 choices to hear our great sports programming.
Get the extra point, no problem.
And the Nashville Predators.
Scores!
Check out 106.3 now and save it as a preset.
Hey, this is Roman Yossi. You're listening to Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Look, a lot of players and young athletes, they don't want an education. They are purely in it for the business of making money, and I respect that part of it too. But we have to have some kind of parameters or guidelines, like what are we really doing? What are we really putting in front of our young kids to where, what are their goals? Like, they're just trying to get money, right? And at this point, if you're just trying to get money, you're never going to reach to the top of where you really want to be because it's too hard. Money cannot be the main factor of your goal. Then you'll never make it to the top. I promise you. I've been there. It ain't about the money. You make the money when you get up there. And plus, most of the money that you're making in college are pennies compared to what you can make at the highest level in the NFL.
That was Roman Harper at the SEC Network on the show earlier, talking about how NIL is such a massive change in college football, at least in his perspective, because the intentions of the player have completely changed. Of course, the end goal of wanting to ultimately make it to the NFL or to win a national championship, those goals are still there because those are still realistic things that just have different accessories and have different, like with NIL and with conference realignment. It's a different landscape with the same end goal. So instead of going for an education, which I don't I don't want to act like, back in the day, the pre-NIL days, that players were picking schools for an education.
No,
This
let's all be
isn't
real.
something new. And I don't want to make that a general statement because I do think that there are plenty of players out there that are working hard to get a degree, and that is their number one goal is to get a degree, or one of their main goals is to get a degree. I fully understand that. But I don't want to get it twisted that there's some idea that, all of a sudden it's now a free-for-all in terms of where they're going to school. Let's not pearl clutch on the pre-NIL days.
Yeah, it hasn't changed that drastically. And he touched on it earlier, too, and we touched on it earlier in the show, that an 18-year-old brain is an 18-year-old brain, right? They know where they want to go play. Yes, now we can talk about how much money they're getting or what NIL deals they're signing or which collective is offering them the most amount of money. But, I mean, Roman even mentioned that when he was 18 years old, he said, I still remember, yes, this was pre-NIL days, but he was like, some of the most important things to me are, obviously he did mention liking the coach. That's got to be pretty important. But he even mentioned, like, when he was 18, thinking about the school's colors, Auburn and Alabama, and liking Alabama's colors, which might sound, what, are you kidding? And I know there's more things on the table now, but I mean, in an 8, like, that's not too far-fetched to think of. And you go for your official visit and you go out and socialize with a lot of players, right? That plays a role too. And yes, the money is a huge factor now. But it's not the end-all, be-all. It's a huge factor, but it's not the end-all, be-all. And like you said, it just wasn't being talked about before. And obviously, I think it's, jacked up a notch in donors and alumni and the collective really, getting in on it because it's legal now. But come on, let's not pretend a lot of this wasn't happening before.
Well, and I do wonder, too, because we talked a lot today about the changing landscape of college football. Greg Sankey, essentially, that was his entire message today, was about the changes of college football, more so the changes with the SEC. Not just conference realignment, but NIL as well, how that affects the SEC, how that affects college football as a whole. Roundtable, do you think any of these changes are either A, bad changes now, or B, will be bad changes in the future? Whether it's realignment, transfer portal, NIL. And I know transfer portal feels like old news at this time, but I mean, big time college football changes.
Bad, no. Different, yes. I don't think anything's bad. I mean, you can look at it like, I don't like this.
It depends on what your perspective is.
Your perspective is, right? You can think, oh, it's bad that players are getting paid. I personally don't. I think it's great for these young athletes because, I mean, hey, you make a lot of money on their product that they put on the field.
It introduces a new set of challenges for people involved.
No, I don't think it's bad at all. And as far as transfer portal, I think transfer portal, that could be teetering on the bad-ish just with kids. And I don't want to say kids because I'm not that much older than
those
them.
Youngins.
Those youngins, as you and I graduated, 3 years ago? But, I mean, I think it's very easy to, and we've even seen it with social media, right? Since when did it become an announcement to announce that you're in the transfer portal, right? These huge almost PR statements on social
Since
media.
the very beginning.
Saying, you're transferring now and, like, putting it out there. And there's so many student athletes in the transfer portal, and the fall is a month or two away, and they're going to be left without a school. I think that the transfer portal is definitely a slippery slope. So I would say that one, but as far as, conference realignment, I think it's just times changing and things adjusting. And as far as NIL, I don't think those two are, but I think transfer portal can be tricky.
I have to disagree with the transfer portal because I hear you that, it's almost, we're teetering on impossible to track where all of these players are playing
exactly.
because they're constantly changing. I find myself doing it all the time. Like, wait, did that quarterback transfer and where did he go? And Bonix is at Oregon now, but who's at Auburn? It's incredibly difficult.
He's in the
to
SEC.
Follow.
Yeah,
but overall, it's a good thing because why do you play college football? In my opinion, you play college football to go to the NFL. You can't go to the NFL if you're on the bench. So if you don't see a path to starting where you're at after a year, 2 years, whatever it might be, then go get your bag and go play somewhere else. Go give yourself the best opportunity to get a starting job. I also look at coaching changes as well. If your coach gets fired, if your coach takes another job, and you committed to that school to play for that coach, which, let's not be naive, that happens almost 100% of the time, you're going to follow that coach because you like that coach, and that coach has set you up for success.
And they recruited you.
And they recruited you.
Because you could be getting the boot.
Exactly. So I would hate to see a college athlete that wants to pursue a career in the NFL or really a career in whatever sport they play, but have to be pigeonholed in a certain school when what they committed to when they were 15, 16, 17, 18 years old is no longer what's being delivered.
No, and I completely agree with everything you said. I think the transfer portal for the individual, yes, can be good. Like you mentioned, getting opportunities. Maybe you can't be a starter. Look at Malik Willis. He was on Auburn, right?
Yeah, he played at Auburn. He transferred,
went to Liberty, and now he just got drafted by the Tennessee Titans and is hopefully, working towards getting a starting job in the near future in Nashville. So that point, yes. I think for college football, as a whole, looking at it from, coaches come down to, you don't have any off season now, right? You are like fully recruiting 24/7.
I don't know if they've ever had an off season.
A little bit, right? I mean, a couple weeks.
I don't know.
They just
maybe for their sake, I sure do hope.
I mean, I don't think their brain actually ever turns off, but it's tricky. I would love to look at the transfer portal right now. Maybe topic for tomorrow of just how many, I guess you could call them college free agents we've got in there.
Let's go to your phones. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Rob is up next.
Hey, Caroline, can you hear me?
Got you.
Okay, you were talking about NIL. So players wanted to be paid. Well, the schools are not paying them any more today than they were a year ago or 5 years ago. College football players, college basketball players, they're still going to play on scholarship, and that's all they're going to receive from the school. But the Supreme Court said players could use their fame, their talent, their status as an athlete to advertise, be a spokesman, show up for special events. And the government thought they would be paid by local businesses. The government never intended for these billionaire or millionaire boosters just to, give them payouts. And I think that's on its way out, Caroline. I don't think that's going to continue. But as far as the schools paying players, you can't sit out 3 years after high school and just skip college football and go to the NFL. It doesn't work that way. Players have always needed to play college football to show the NFL how talented they are, and they're going to always do that. There will never be a time when players will stop playing college football. I also don't believe there will ever be a time when schools will pay them any more than their scholarship. The NIL may continue, but players are never going to get any of that CBS TV money. They're never going to get that Alabama, Georgia bowl money. It's just not going to happen. NIL, maybe it stays. I don't think it's going to continue the way it's going right now. I want to hear what you all think.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks,
your
Rob.
call, Rob. So a couple things in terms of, getting paid by the schools. No, that's the entire intention of NIL. Let's not forget that NIL stands for name, image, and likeness, and that in which there's a quid pro quo transaction. You do something for me, I do something for you. And in terms of getting paid by the boosters, I think that's a fair point that he brings up, that he doesn't think that's going to continue, because that's something that the NCAA has come out and said, no collectives, you have to disband the collectives can't pool all of this money together. But I go back to what I said about the potential regulation of NIL and how it would be so difficult, because as soon as you make a monetary transaction allowed, it's really difficult to track back where that came from. And, it's not impossible, but I don't see an enforcement process by the NCAA. And if the NCAA does want to, enforce no money from collectives or no NIL deals from collectives, then you are going to see massive, massive lawsuits from these collectives and from these college football players, because you cannot get in the way of a college football player making money per the Supreme Court decision. So I hear ya. The collectives are, have been wild. but I don't see them going away anytime soon just because who's enforcing it? Because it's not like the NCAA has been great at investigations in the past.
Well, and to your point of, even if they were to try to say, hey, no collectives, nobody associated with the university paying these players, there's a loophole around everything. Okay, so I'm not, as an alumni or as a booster, going to pay, but I work for X, Y, and Z company, and this company, we want you to be our spokesperson, and we're going to pay you through that way, right? So there's all these loopholes and everything, and I get what Rob's saying, and I understand where it's coming from, but how do you stop it or how do you regulate it is the question. We just don't know.
Not a job that I would want to have.
Yes, no.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get into your calls, your texts coming up next. Also, we talk a lot about players making money. So why don't we make some money ourselves?
Let's make some money.
We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Konezvik. We're in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Tune in for our SEC Media Day coverage throughout the day. Brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket, equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, and hose fittings, seals, packing, joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
From the Fox 17 News Code Red Weather Center.
I'm Fox 17 Code Red meteorologist Greg Bobus. Our forecast calling for high temperatures back into the 90s tomorrow after breaking our streak of 28 consecutive days in the 90s. We're talking middle to upper 90s for the rest of this week and very little to no rainfall throughout the week as well.
This weather report brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical.
Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Hey, it's Jared from my official sportsbook app, the FanDuel Sportsbook app. We've hit the halfway point of the baseball season, and you can turn big hits and dingers into big wins with FanDuel Sportsbook before the Midsummer Classic. Because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just sign up using the promo code JGM and place your first bet, and FanDuel will give you up to $1,000 back in free bets if you don't win. Home Run Derby tonight. Pete Alonso is my pick. Why? Because the guy keeps winning, and he doesn't have to change his swing for it. So I'm going to go with Pete Alonso. There's no better place to bet America's pastime than on America's #1 sportsbook. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code JGM to get started with your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right. 21 and older in President Tennessee. First online real money wager only. Refund issues non-withdrawable side credit that expires in 14 days and restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
At the law office of Amanda J. Gentry, we are committed to defending your rights. Being arrested doesn't have to be the worst day of your life. Being served with custody paperwork doesn't have to be the worst day of your life. It may feel that way, but if you have Amanda J. Gentry representing you, you can feel confident that you're going to have the best quality representation in all of Middle Tennessee. Amanda J. Gentry goes wherever justice demands. 615-604-6263. AmandaJGentry.com.
Smokeville Smoke Shop has been serving Hendersonville and Metro Nashville since 2015 and is committed to providing high quality, hands-on, and personable customer service. Stop in the Smokeville Smoke Shops in Hendersonville, Gallatin, Hermitage, and Goodlettsville to try any of their wide selection of locally sourced products and selection of top nationwide brands including vapes, hookah, hand-blown glass, detox systems, e-juices, kratom products, leaf wraps, a dab bar at the Hendersonville location, and much more. Visit Smokeville Smoke Shops today.
Signs First is the official sign company for 102.5 The Game. Go to sfnash.com.
You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Sounds like this has been a game-changing day for all of us.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Hey, Nashville's best deal of the week is Bavarian Beer House at Opry Mills. Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, is a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. So head to the Game Nashville/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Konezvik. We're in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. Michelle, unless you have a thought, the people have spoken. If you'd like to go to the phones.
Oh, we're going to the phones?
Well, would you, if you have thought, or we can go to the phones?
No. I thought you were going to continue. Let's go to the phones.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you have a thoughtful line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, Liam texts in and says, it's great for the kids. I'm assuming NIL. Great for the kids, but it makes my school even less competitive and saps some of my interest in the sport. That's another thing, is with the idea behind NIL is do the big get bigger and the small get smaller. You can even make an argument either way, because NIL would offer up an opportunity for some smaller schools to get players that they wouldn't normally get pre-NIL because now money is a motivating factor. I'll go back to the Jackson State example. That they were a top wide receiver in the country. I believe it was wide receiver, maybe it was a running back. I don't know what it was. But a top wide receiver in the country, let's just go with that. Committed to Jackson State over Alabama because of a massive NIL deal. And he said it wasn't because of that, but I have to think that had to have played some role in it.
Want to help that Deion Sanders is your coach.
That too, as well. But, whenever you're choosing between Deion Sanders and Nick Saban, no disrespect to Nick Saban's partner in the Aflac commercials, but I'm probably going to go with Nick Saban.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Deion Sanders. But it could be a draw for some schools that, traditionally don't get some of the top recruits, because now if you offer them money, they could be more interested. But that's also a big if, because if you're at a school that traditionally doesn't get big recruits, it's probably because you don't have the allure of your school to get big recruits, or you don't have the buy-in from your fan base that is necessary for NIL deals.
But I still think also, I get where Liam's coming from on the text line. I really don't think, though, it's going to change it that drastically, because at the end of the day, the best players are going to go to the top programs, because those are, first off, you're the best players. You're getting recruited by one of those top programs, and you're going to be still choosing between those schools on who's going to offer you the most money from the collective. I almost said contract, because it just feels like we're heading towards, college football, especially talking about realignment and just all the changes heading towards what could look like a mini NFL, but it's not. And when we sit back, the changes aren't that big. I really don't think it's going to affect recruits that much, because, you're still going to be going after the same recruits. And, okay, Texas A&M might get a quarterback.
You're going
over
after the
Alabama.
same recruits, but are you landing the same recruits? That's the key here.
But is a top player still going to end up at a Big Ten school or an SEC school, right? You might see within a conference schools that are, right, I could see Tennessee, right? Their collective, we know all about that. And maybe being able to compete more with A&M, Alabama for recruits, but I don't think it's going to be this drastic thing of, because at the end of the day, you need to be winning, right? We're going to see these companies invest in these players, but if essentially they're playing to win, they love their school so much, they're investing in this player to win, because what is the return if it's not winning, right? You mentioned a soda. You mentioned, or pop, sorry, I should say. We're in the South. A pop.
No. No, Michelle, nobody in the South says pop.
Oh, really?
No.
Well, I just totally messed that up. My bad. Well, whatever you guys call it, the fizzy drink, right? You mentioned, okay, say they're paying X, Y, and Z player, and he's getting millions of dollars. Is that soda company really going to see that much of a return?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
And I'm sorry, I'll never say pop or soda ever again. Coke. There we go.
Coke. All right, well, we're talking a lot about money, so let's make some money. We've got a home run derby tonight, so let's pick it with some Carolines.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Carolines. Here on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Michelle, would you like to do the honors of your pick tonight for the home run derby?
Okay, listen, ladies and gentlemen. Ronald Acuna, minus 250. Give me him and make it my lock.
Minus 250 to win or to go to the second round?
To win.
Minus 250, really?
Yes. Get him. Get him on here. Okay, we did figure out that sports betting is not legal in Atlanta, so it was hard to access the website, but I did figure it out. Give me him all the way to win. That guy has a monster swing, kills it in BP, so I'm going Acuna all the way tonight.
I'm going with Juan Soto.
Ooh,
plus
good one.
650 because first of all, did we just see the baller move that Juan Soto made? Flexing his muscles to the Washington Nats. Also, Juan Soto opens up the home run derby against Jose Ramirez, and Jose Ramirez is only plus 150 to make it to the second round, but Jose Ramirez has not hit a home run. He has not hit a home run since early June, I want to say. The bats have been cooling off for Jose Ramirez, so I like Juan Soto not just to get past the first round, but I'm going to pick him to win it all because this is a fun bet.
Oh, I love it.
Pete Alonso is an easy pick. I heard Jared picked him earlier. That's an easy pick at only plus 190 odds. Get a little bit more bang for your buck. Get a little bit more meat on the bone. Take Juan Soto to win it all. Or Albert Pujols, the Cardinals fan in me, taking him at plus 2,400. Don't love those odds. But that's going to do it for us today. Caroline Fenton, Michelle Knezovic. We will be back tomorrow with more SEC Media Days coverage at 2.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
For the first